When we're going to look back at 2020, 2021, I think all of us would probably not look back at this time with fondness due to a number of reasons. The virus probably is one of them. It really changes all our doings. But yeah, this is not just the virus. There's a lot of other changes happening at the moment. We all see what's happening in world politics, so there's a lot of changes internationally and in South Africa. But if you look closer into agriculture, especially in our crops, there's one thing that stands out very clearly, and this is that the European Union, the organization or the entity that imports most of our nuts, they have certain I wouldn't call it feelings, but they at this moment extremely scared about global climate change. So much so that it has become a political thing for these guys. With global climate change, there's always also problems with biodiversity losses. And I mentioned in previous talks that one of the biggest research projects or research papers, the more read research papers that came out, was done in 2017 by a bunch of Germans, where they evaluated the not diversity, but the number of insects on a German forest in the north of Germany, and they recorded about an 80% drop in insects. So this really shook the world awake, and everyone started looking, and in the end it ended up in Europe and as part of the so-called Green Deal program. Now what this Green Deal thing basically is Europe has realized that they sit with the power to influence people across the world. They're buying our products, they can tell what they want on the products, and they can dictate how we should produce the products that they buy. So they set the standards and we have to comply. Unfortunately, there's not much we can change about this. They announced the so-called Green Deal program, and the main aim for the Green Deal program is to get Europe carbon neutral by the year 2050. In order to get to that point, they set certain standards, certain milestones along the way. The big problem is that currently our global climate change, the rate at which the planet is warming now stands at about 1.2 degrees above pre-industrial times. They want to try and limit this to 1.5 degrees, and if all the pessimists are correct, we're probably going to go to about 2.2, which will really have profound effects on what we do and how we in agriculture are going to look at things. Okay, what they're going to do, they announced a program in November 2019. What they're going to do is one of the first things is to stop manufacturing internal combustion engines. I know big companies like VW and BMW already indicated by 2030 it will mostly be electric, no internal combustion engines. And one can imagine that South Africa, I read a report on this. The director of Toyota South Africa wrote, and in the Eastern Cape, these guys, our guys are making a lot of vehicles for Europeans and for East and America. So we're exporting a lot of vehicles. That will have to change, unfortunately, if the deal goes through in its current form. For agriculture, it basically entails that they're very, very scared about the pesticides we use. They say by 2030 the pesticides currently registered should be reduced by half. 50% of the industry should be converted to organic agriculture, which I personally will find it very difficult for macadamias at the current moment. They're also going to look at fertilizer. And then obviously a lot of products that are being produced in the developing world that are imported into Europe by the means of fossil fuel. Yeah, these guys are going to seriously look at that as well. Andre de Ruyter had about 2 weeks ago from Eskom had a talk at Tikkies a while ago. All our energy, or most of it, currently are being produced by burning fossil fuel. By 2030, the idea is to switch over to renewables, and if not, then they'll probably just slap a levy on anything that gets exported from here to there. So there's a lot of changes coming. I'm not sure how sustainable some of these plans are. I think time will tell whether a lot of these ideals are going to be followed through or not. I think what is important is that it is bound to affect us. It's probably bound to affect us how we're going to approach agriculture. And I think the changes that the so-called Green Deal is forcing on us is probably not bad changes. Something that we should have looked at already. Looking at the chemicals that they particularly don't want in Europe. The first of that is organophosphates. We don't use a lot of that in macadamias at the moment. I'm thinking here of chlorpyrifos and acephate. I spoke to some of the chemical guys, and those two products are probably not going to be around for much longer anyway. So organophosphates I don't think is much of an issue for us. What is an issue is any broad spectrum product that has, and any product that has an effect on bees. Now this is a very broad sort of statement. A lot of the insecticides that we're currently using on stinkbugs, which is our key pest, falls in this category. So we will really have to look at alternatives. Second to last is any product that affects a human or animal endocrine glands, and there's a lot of them. A lot of them are pyrethroids, and a lot of them are some of the organophosphates as well. And the last group you can see there, you probably heard a lot of in the press. Since 2016, Europe became concerned about 3 new nicotinoids. Imidacloprid, chlorthalidin, and thiamethoxam. These things have profound effects on bees. I know research has been conducted on imidacloprid. If you apply it this season, subsequent season, it can still be found in the flowers, and probably still has. I think Hanli's work she has done some work on this, very interesting work. It still has an effect on bees. It still has sublethal effects on bees. So these are things that Europe definitely will not allow. Bayer in South Africa, Bayer International, has not, this year, during May, they had to apply for the continuance of imidacloprid, and they have not applied for that. So they're no longer supporting the product. The product will be available to growers from various generic companies. At this moment, it's still pretty legal to use it in South Africa, provided that you do not pick up residues on any products that enters the EU. At this moment, they've dropped their MRLs to a level of detection. So we have to look at this one very carefully. That being said, I don't think we will pick up residues of this in the nut itself. Most certainly, it will be in the flowers and other parts of the tree. Now, closer to home, this is a list of pesticides, and you won't be able to read that. Sorry, there's just too many of them. This is a list of pesticides currently registered on MAX. You see, there's 58 products. 37 of those are insecticides, 7 fungicides, and then 40 herbicides and growth regulators. I then looked at the list of the EU, one of the importing quality certification bodies, the UTSKP, and I also looked at the list of CropLife Africa, not CropLife Africa, CropLife International, and I just listed all the chemicals that they're either going to ban or are considering for evaluation, and you won't be able to see that as well. The next slide will make it a bit clearer. narrowing it a bit down, number of pesticides or insecticides, 37. Plant extracts is about 11%, pheromones and pathogens about 8%. Pathogens is basically just fungus, fungi and disease-causing organisms that we spray to cause, obviously, diseases in insects. Important to note is that the conventional pesticides there makes up about 3/4 of the products. And if we narrow it a little bit more down and we only list the products that didn't fall under either of those two lists, we came up with only 16 products, of which about a third of that is conventional pesticides. And to be honest, if you have to look at them critically, a lot of those pesticides listed there is fairly old products old and obscure products that is not being used in a lot of countries. Some, like methoxyfenozide, my favorite pesticide. I think it works pretty well. Some of that obviously is listed there as well. I think this basically points to where the EU and some of the other importers of our products, where they want us to focus. Looking at plant extracts, looking at pheromones, looking at pathogens, and also looking at a combination of these three. The big question, trying to be very even-handed, is conventional pesticides then really bad, and is organic production really good? And the big question there is absolutely not. Since 1960, you can read there, since 1960 our global food production tripled, or nearly tripled, because we're using these products. If we didn't use the products, large percentage of us sitting in this room won't be here. Without these products, you can see there about 50 to 80% of the world's food will be lost. I think what is also important is that, especially here in the Nelspruit area, if it wasn't for pesticides such as DDT, we probably won't be sitting here because there would be malaria. My neighbor in town works in the malaria program, and they a few years ago they took DDT from the list, and the malaria cases just simply shot up. 3 years down the line, the numbers were so high that they had to bring DDT back into it. So without pesticides, people, we would have serious problems. Looking again at the flip side, mycotoxins. This is toxins secreted by various fungi on grain in Lesotho, organic grain in Lesotho. These mycotoxins induced various cancers in the guys using organic grain. So the long and the short of this whole thing is not all pesticides are bad, but not all organic pesticides are good. Some are and some are not. So try and find the middle road. That is not always that easy. The Green Deal program definitely will not stop. It will carry on in some form or the other. And I think we as a macadamia industry and we as a bee industry must take cognizance of this and must plan for the next few years. It's a gradual process that will be phased in stepwise. As you can see there, the first phases must be in by 2030. Obviously, certain of the pesticides will be removed before then. My big problem is that with our current government structures, is that it takes a lot of time to register a pesticide at the moment in South Africa, to such a point that a lot of the chemical companies are frustrated with the slowness of the process and with the bureaucracy of the process. You can read there, it could take us up as much as 7 years to get a product through the entire process, and this is simply not acceptable for us as agriculture and for the growers, for the chemical companies. And this is something we will seriously have to address in the next few years. We have to speed up the process because this speaks essentially to our ability to compete on the international markets. If we take 7 years, we're not going to be able to compete. It's as simple as that. I think, yeah, if you look at that, if it takes 7 years, we have 9 years before this program kicks in. This means we have 2 years to move very quickly and make a lot of noise. So the onus is on us to really start moving. I mentioned previously as well is that the risk of exceeding MRLs in macadamias is very low. We remove the husk and then we remove the shells and we put the entire macadamia through a process. So the chances of us picking up residues, especially of contact sprays, are going to be very little. All things being said, we do pick up residues on macadamias. A lot of the processes, you can speak to them here, are picking up piperonal butoxide, which is a synergist, I think mostly mixed with some of the pyrethroids. So although I say the chances are slight, there's always a chance. What is also important is that the new products that are coming in the market is going to be very expensive. At this moment, your pyrethroids are old. They were first brought into the market in the 1970s. Been used for a long time. Patent rights has expired. These products are cheap. The new products are not cheap. Figures I had, Harley must correct me if I'm wrong, but to design and get a product into the market is something like 600 million euros. Is that the figure you have as well? It could be quite a bit more. I heard lately they talk about over €1 billion, but don't quote me on that one. So it's expensive. The company has to recover their money, and the only way they're going to do it is to sell it to you, the farmers. Talking about products that we wanted to use from one of the companies for stink bugs, you talk about in the region of 5,000 rand a kilogram. So it's extremely expensive. But obviously these products you use smaller quantities, and yeah, I think if you compare it, it's not too bad. I mentioned that we should always retain our levels of sustainability, whatever we do, retain or improve. And I always say, if you look at the treatment of say the stink bugs, you know that our levels of precision are not good enough at the moment. We treat the stink bugs in the orchard very much like a guy that shoots at a bunch of guinea fowl with a shotgun. Yeah, you don't have to aim too much, but you're going to hit a few. So for now, I think from now on in the future, we'll have to focus much more in detail on what the bugs are doing, and I'm coming to that part of the talk just now. The important thing is that all pesticides that we have should be protected for as long as possible, so that we can get as much advantage out of them as possible. What are we as SAMAC doing now with this Green Deal that I'm talking to you in mind? And I spoke to some guys now outside during lunch. The big thing that we see that must be done is training. Training is going to be the cornerstone of whatever we do. Barry from Green Farms has kicked off these MAC 201 calls this week. A lot of us are going to be involved with that. Apart from that, I'm sure most of you already got your copy of the Macadamia scouting booklet. We are busy working on a handbook for insects and diseases. Last 20 years, a lot of research has been published on this subject. A lot of that's laying around in various publications, various yearbooks. The idea here is to compile what knowledge we have at the moment into a workable book. The whole idea behind this is that a lot of farmers are at the mercy of chemical reps and consultants at the moment, and I think the idea is to empower farmers to make some decisions on their own, so that they also know what the insects on the farms are doing, and where the breaks are, where you've got to be more careful, and where you can give a little bit of leeway. Other thing that I'm very interested in, and that we will definitely kick off this season, is looking at scouting software. Various companies have designed very nice software packages in Cape Town, Western Cape. These guys have been using these software packages for decades, probably 20, 25 years. it's still a pretty new thing in the Lowveld. I know big companies here are using it, and some of the growers as well. What I like about this is that if we clever and we plan it clever, we can get these programs to talk to each other, and we can network the programs, and so doing. If all of us are doing the scouting exactly on the same way, we can get extremely accurate data of what the insects are doing. And when we have extreme accurate data, then we can make very good decisions on how to treat the bugs. I said in the past, IPM has got a lot of definitions, and I wrote my own definition. I say IPM is nothing less than information. You cannot do any form of integrated pest management if you do not know what the insects and the diseases are doing in the orchard. So IPM equals information, and this is where the programs comes in. So for me, it's a pretty much a giveaway that we have to go this way. SAMAC is also funding 3 projects that for me at the moment are standing out. I think the most critical project at the moment is looking at pruning and the effects of pruning on a lot of things, on insects, on diseases, on yield. Tall, dense trees can most simply not be properly controlled with no sprayer. Anything above 5.5 meters, and you're going to be battling to spray the tree tops. Trees that haven't got windows pruned into them, you're going to battle getting spray deep into the tree. Getting to the cosset. If you're going to spray for macadamia felted cosset, you need to wet the main stem and scaffolding branches. You're looking at 12,000 litres a hectare. If you prune proper, this is not going to happen. You're going to look at lower volumes. There's 2 guys looking at the physics of spraying. How do you wet a tree, a macadamia tree? How do you adjust your machine to get the optimal delivery out of the machine? That I regard as critical. Getting back to protecting the pesticides that we have, I think we got to stretch the legs as much as possible. And the last project I kicked off, and other people are doing it at the moment, and I'm very happy to report that the macadamia felted cosset parasitoid came into the country on Wednesday. So it's here and it's currently being evaluated, we hope, and hope positively evaluated, that is, so that we can release it in the not so distant future. This area, unfortunately, the felted cosset is a big thing, and if we don't do this, release a parasitoid, it's gonna become a major headache. Some future work that we are talking on. The key pest on macadamia is the stink bugs, without any doubt. This is also the pest that we have the least amount of environmentally soft products that we can use. We had a communication this morning from a company, Oxitec. We've been talking to them for some time. You're welcome to Google the name. What they do is they build in a defective gene on the stink bugs or on a specific insect. They do it in the male insects. They allow these insects then they breed them, release them in the orchard, allow them to mix with the wild population, mate with them, and the moment they mate, they pass their genes on, and these females cannot produce offspring. They've been very successful with a bunch of other crops in the past. I got a few criticisms about this project, but I think there are ways around it. My first criticism is, you probably caught on already, is that you actually got to release stink bugs in your orchards. So the trick here is to release it early in the season. I think it probably will work, but yeah, this is a debate for another time. I'm not going in there. We're also looking at we also spoke to the microelectronics, the Carl and Emily Fuchs Institute at Tekkies, to look at what they can provide the industry, look at the factories, look at the networking of the scouting programs, and also looking at automatic pheromone traps. So those are things that we are talking and that will kick off very soon, having a meeting with them next Wednesday. And then lastly, we're also speaking to pheromone developers overseas to look at at using the stink of the stink bug or the defensive compounds to chase these insects out of the orchards. Also looking at ovipositional attractants for the male false codling moth and Mac nut borer. As you know, at the moment the pheromones lure males, and it's the females that lay the eggs, and out of the eggs comes the young larvae that we have to control. And if you lure males instead of females, your fault factor is absolutely huge, and we see that the traps aren't as accurate as it can be. The next slide is basically just a duplicate. I'm not going to go into that too much. Just looking at this at the sting bug, just quickly understanding the problem. I think if you understand the problem, it's always a little bit easier solving it. So the first thing that we have for sting bugs is that they occur in low numbers and cause the low numbers cause extreme levels of damage. And currently there's no effective monitoring for it. The only effective monitoring treatment that we have, your DVP knockdown sprays, are no longer legal. I know everyone still uses it because it works. Technically it's not legal. Practically, I'm not sure if I should say this, but there's been some progress with the pheromone work on the two-spotted buck. And yeah, watch the space. I think we're gonna have pheromones for this guy in a not so distant future. And yeah, and then the big issue actually is that most pheromones, not most products that is registered for sting bug control will not really be accepted by the EU dispensation. So we've got to look at alternatives, and I think this is important. Now I'm going to go to I'm just going to look at alternatives that we can use during this time, or reasons why we should not spray. When I started in the Mac industry, it was standard practice to clean up the orchard before flowering, and a lot of guys still do that. We did 4 years of in detail monitoring of the populations of the insects. The numbers of the two-spotted bug are now at the absolute lowest it will ever be in a year. These guys are out of the orchards. You do find a lot of the winter complex now. Bugs like the yellow-edged back and here and there, you'll probably find Nazara viridula. These things you will find in the orchard. They are going to move out. So a spraying now will absolutely not affect whatever is going to happen to sting bugs later in the orchard. We also realized there's some literature that came from Hawaii that says that 99.5 or 99.3, I can't remember the figure exactly, of all flowers that occur now will not turn into a sellable macadamia nut. It will fall. The idea here is that just after flowering, you probably sit with a lot of wiggle room, that a bit of damage can be tolerated straight after flowering. What we did is on the photograph, and you may not be able to see it so clearly, but we actually started breaking out flowers on a bunch of trees to see if it will affect the yield or the nut size and the quality of the fruit. We broke out an estimated 30 and 16% of the flowers, and we repeated it a number of times. Each time we came up with the exact same results, and that there was no difference whether we broke out the flowers or not, or did a severe or a mild breakout of the flowers, which tells me that in the end, if you have a little bit of stink bug damage now during this part of the season, it will affect a specific nut to fall or not to fall, but in the end, the total number of nuts that are going to remain hanging in the tree are not going to be different. So we do not have to spray before flowering. There's no reason for that, unless there is really a serious infestation. And I cannot, where I'm standing here, I cannot give a general recommendation. So in most cases, there's no reason to spray before or straight after flowering. So let the bees do their job. Let them pollinate the trees, get as much nuts set on the tree. And when the nuts are hanging, and when the nuts are hanging in the tree, then protect them by all means for sting bugs and other insects. Getting to the next group of insects, I'm not too worried about these. the nut borers. Why I'm saying not too worried about them is we have a lot of products, and our products are acceptable under EU dispensation. But yet, nut borers gave us serious problems this season that went past. And there's a number of reasons for that. First is that there's only one stage of the of the nut borer that can be controlled. When I say nut borer, I mean Schalk moth as well. And that's the egg and the young larval stages. Fortunately for us, egg laying in both these moths, Schalk moth and nut borer, is very coordinated. So it happens all in the same time. What we've seen this past season is that it seemed to occur around about the first week in December. Guys that they put their methoxyphenazide or EMA sprays on at that time, all had good results. Guys that sprayed the week or 10 days prior or later, the results were not so good. Coming back to one of our research projects, Macadamia, nut borer, Schalk moth prefer the deeper inside parts of the tree. They do not like the tops of the tree like stingbugs. They actually slightly prefer the bottoms of the tree, but there's about a 10-fold increase in individual insects the deeper you go into the tree. So you've got to get your pesticide into the tree right as deep as possible. And on this mango there, I showed you what I would like to see on a macadamia nut. Fine covering or fine droplets sitting on the outside without any runoff. Now this is where the trick comes. If you haven't pruned properly, you've got to spray the front bit facing towards the sprayer, that it looks like this, but yet on the back side of the nut you also have to have a covering of droplets of similar nature, and that is basically a physical impossibility. This is why we're looking at alternatives here, and we've got lots of alternatives. The next slide will just quickly summarize them. There's various pesticides, and the ones that we have, it's fairly soft products. Pheromones, I know there were problems with the pheromones this season. The guys are looking at it, and it will be rectified. There's a range of biological pesticides, fungi, bacteria, viruses, nematodes. And then lastly, our natural enemy is not being used as widely as I would like to see it. Spoke to the guys in Australia. They got our parasitoid there, and they're using it very effectively and very widely. The nice bit about the parasitoid is you do not have the issues with the spray. Parasitoid will fly. It will see where the eggs are, and it will parasitoids will actually hunt for the eggs. Much more effective. The last insect I'm really going to talk in detail is probably the most difficult one. Is thrips. What do we know about thrips? It feels like we know so little, but we actually know quite a bit already. What we do know is that in most cases, most crops, we sit with the main problem with thrips is that it causes cosmetic damage. But for macadamias, this is not an issue. So the little bit of damage we see on the outside of macadamia nut, we have proven now, has absolutely no effect on the quality of the nut. Could actually even be beneficial because a lot of thrip damage causes thinner shells, thinner husks, higher crackouts. What we do know that thrips can do is it causes the tiny leaf syndrome I mentioned before, and as you know, your factory of the tree is the leaves. If the leaves are compromised, your carbohydrate reserves are going to be affected, and with that your yield's probably going to be affected. Ask me a question: what is the economic threshold here? And the big answer, or the easy answer, or the difficult answer maybe, is we don't have an idea. There's currently a research project also being done by University of Pretoria, and this answer will hopefully be forthcoming from that. Looking at citrus in California, where the leaves are also affected, similar to macadamias, there the guys don't spray. They don't spray at all, and the trees don't seem to be affected. Citrus is not macadamias. Macadamias, for me at the moment, certainly looks a lot more susceptible than citrus. Another reason that I'm a bit worried about thrips, especially during flower time, is it could be passively transmitting diseases. There's a big possibility that it could transmit dry flower disease, and it could also transmit a disease that's probably not even a disease yet, that we're working on it, the yellowing of the tree, the chlorosis, the Macadamia chlorosis. One of the ladies at ARC found a virus or a virus-like organism in macadamias, and according to literature that she found, this virus-like organism has been transmitted passively, not actively, with thrips to between plants. So yeah, this research has not been done on this to prove it either way. So the big question here is, should we spray or not? And some people do, and I absolutely do not think so. Certainly not while the trees are flowering. The idea here is to get as many nuts set on the tree before and then thereafter, or even before that. Actually, I'll get to that now. Control the thrips. I think our main aim is to set as many nuts as possible, and not to have as clean orchards as possible. In actual fact, the opposite is true. We need life in the orchards, as many other insects as possible, and I think you heard this morning from previous speakers that we're really looking at regenerative agriculture. We're looking at cover crops, and with cover crops comes a whole range of beneficial insects. Okay, so my take-home message is we need insects, the right ones, and don't spray during flowering. What you can spray during flowering obviously is your nutrients, and obviously the past season or two, flower diseases has been rife. It seems to be getting worse, yeah, this brings me to the next one. And we spoke a bit about that already, about the link between thrips and various flower diseases. I can mention a few anecdotal cases that we came across the last year. On one farm, the farm opened up the season with two chlorpyrifos sprays, and I'm very convinced that your thrips is basically resistant against chlorpyrifos, and the same for pyrethroids. Remember that citrus thrips has been exposed to pyrethroid spray since about the 1970s. 50 years, it's half a century. These things have 9 generations a season. With a warmer climate, we can possibly expect now closer to 10 generations a season. That's 1 generation a month. Goes very quickly through their cycle time. So yeah, thrips seem to be fairly resistant against these 2 pesticides. I evaluated a farm last season. As I was driving into the farmer just came out of the orchard with his tractor. He's spraying his orchards himself, and he sprayed chlorpyrifos mixed with the pyrethroid. I think it was Bulldog. Fortunately, in this case, we had a control block that was not treated, and I had the opportunity to monitor thrips and have a look-see what happened in both the control block and the treatment block. And I didn't put the results here, but I can show it to you if you're interested. There was absolutely no difference. And this is like maybe hour, maybe 2 hours after application. So thrips are not controlled by these things. In actual fact, it makes it worse. In the Barberton orchards where the guys got felted cosset, we have no option. There's no products at the moment registered, so the guys are using some of the insect growth regulators off-label, using buprofezin or nemesis combined with oil, and some guys recommended the usage of chlorpyrifos in this case as well. I mentioned previously that in case where you spray for Macadamia felted cosset, you've got to spray high volumes. And I'll show you now a slide how the orchards look like after this felted cosset spray was applied. Thrips like I've never seen before. The farm that I mentioned previously that started the season with 2 chlorpyrifos sprays had no control of flower diseases. sprayed at least twice a week, if not more, to try and get flower diseases under control. So people, I think if there's another take-home message is that be careful with these products. If there's biological products that are available, or softer options, please consider those before you use these things, especially early in the season. Okay. Yeah, I think. But the last thing that we did this season that has just gone past is we released Amblyseus swirskii. It's a predatory mite against thrips. We did it on a lot of farms and it didn't work all that well. One farm was not sprayed. A very young orchard. It was their first crop. The guy applied 1 or 2 sprays. On that farm, we saw major differences in thrip damage on the trees, where we applied the predatory mite, or we didn't apply the predatory mite. So there were big differences, big advantages. So unfortunately, we have to spray for stingbug. You kill the predators, and and the results were not good. Getting back to my point, stingbugs are the key pest. Control them, and the rest of the game is easy. Here's the promised slide. I'm not sure you won't be able to see that very clearly, but essentially it's basically just sticks standing there with a little bit of small leaves, and this I ascribe 100% to the usage of chlorpyrifos, and probably a combination, chlorpyrifos mostly. I think this guy everyone probably knows in the region by now. Macadamia felted cosset. It is at this moment spreading fairly widely in our region. Originally it came from a nursery in Barberton. The guys bought plants that were infested, and I regard those as a primary sites. The last 2 years, this guy escaped from the primary sites and has now jumped into a lot of secondary sites. One of them is just out here on the N4. One is out on the Sabi Road, where there's really serious nodes of infection happening. My concern is what's happening in between those nodes. These pests are very, very easy to miss in an orchard. They're tiny things. You could really, if they occur in low numbers, you're not going to find them. So I'm very worried about this pest. But I mentioned the good news already. Parasitoid is in. At the moment, it's will undergo host specificity testing. I always get that one mixed up. So we must now prove that it does not damage indigenous scale insects in South Africa, and once we've proven that, it will be released for the industry. Unfortunately, there's no timeline for this. It will depend how specific this parasitoid is. This parasitoid originates from Australia. The guys in Hawaii went and thanks Kobus. The guys in Hawaii actually went to Australia. They located the parasitoid in Australia, took it to Hawaii. Mark Wright, one of our old colleagues, when the cosset arrived here, dropped a phone call to Mark, asked if they would mind to send a parasitoid on. The Americans were extremely nice, and they said, no, South Africans are a bunch of nice people. They allow the parasitoid in here without any money. So yeah, phone call or two, and we have the parasitoid. Let's hope. Let's keep our fingers crossed. The trick here, obviously, that if we release the parasitoid, it will not be a magic bullet. If you're going to spray, continue spraying, or if you're going to use a lot of broad spectrum products in the orchards, you will simply kill the parasitoid, and this type of story will repeat itself. So we have no choice. This guy will basically mandate that we have to look at alternative, softer approaches for crop protection. But obviously, the Green Deal that I highlighted earlier is also going to be an issue that we have to fight with. in the Nelspruit area, but also other places. KZN, there's serious issues in the south coast and the Ballito area with bark borers. In the south coast, in Port Edward and Ballito, it's a prolific shottle borer that we recovered in macadamias. So far, with a bit of luck, we've not recovered the prolific shottle borer in this area, but we located a lot of others. It's not just confined to macadamias. This photograph was taken from a citrus tree. I found it in lychees. We found it to a lesser extent in avocados, but a lot of macadamias were affected. Again, here, areas, Brondal, fairly severely affected. Javerland area, White River, Barberton area on the Butler's Road, a lot of those farms are affected. These things are normally stress related, so if a plant is under some kind of stress, it will go for it. This is the common wisdom, but I've seen so many cases where trees without any signs of stress were attacked, and I've seen cases on one specific farm where the trees are riddled with macadamia felt that causes that it's a stress that you can stress a tree properly. These trees were not affected. So, you know, although I'm saying that I prefer stress trees, please don't quote me on it, because they do affect other trees as well. I'm a bit worried about this. We first encountered the first bark borer 2014 in the Barberton Valley, and since then every year the numbers have escalated. And like I said this morning, if you ask the reason why are the numbers becoming bigger, I don't know. I have no idea. Spoke to the Aussies, spoke to the Hawaiians, and exactly the same thing is happening there. So, and it's not just the mac industry. In Australia, the avocado growers are extremely concerned about it. And if you really don't know what the reason is, you can blame climate. I think the difference between high and low temperatures are placing the trees under stress, and this is my working theory. If I'm wrong, you're welcome to prove it. Take home message. If there's one message I would like to get over today is that we need life in the orchards. Not just insect life, we need plant life in the orchards as well. Why is the insect a pest? It's because we created a monoculture. We upset the natural balance. Try and get the natural balance back in the orchard by planting cover crops. This lure insects, beneficial insects, yeah, bees, pollinators, but also other beneficial insects such as predators and parasitoids. That photograph there, or those guys on the treadwheel, I always say it's a torture device developed by the Romans to pump water in mines. So they got a bunch of slaves to step on this wheel, and once this thing starts moving, you got to move the whole time. Otherwise, if you fall off, you just get mangled by the blades of this thing. So it was extreme effective torture device. And the British used it in some of their prisons in the Victorian times to keep their prisoners busy. Why I put it there is that our Prof. Honey and my Prof. Eric Holm, we always spoke about pesticide threat mold, and this is exactly what it is. Once you took your first step, it's so difficult getting off. If you fall off once, it will be painful once. Stay on, it will be painful for a long time. People, that's it. I think what we must do is get life back in the orchards, and once we've done that, I think it will be a little bit easier going forward. Any questions?
Dr. Schalk, two questions quickly. First one, on the trips in them, has SAMAC done any studies of neem oil as yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and then the second thing, with all this funguses coming in on the macadamia flowers, the cladosporums, the blossom blights, the dry flower disease, everything. I know there's some farmers that comes in with about 4 fungus sprays, coppers, and then the Ballast, Amistar, whatever else is on the market. Has there been any research done on the quality of the pollen being affected by all these funguses, the bees not being able to utilize it as bee brood in the boxes?
No, not at all. There's been no work on the fungicides on bees, no, not at all. What SAMAC is doing at the moment is looking at the study, because there's so many things that we do not know. And one of them is exactly at what stage should you be spraying for disease like husk rot. So my wife is busy doing trials at the moment where she opens up, she exposes nuts at various stages through the season to see when the nuts are getting infected. So that project is in the second phase, second year, and we should have the results there. The idea behind the project is to try and reduce your fungicide sprays and hence your cost as much as possible. You know, at the moment it's a bit of a thumbsuck. We do not know. Hence we spray every week, 2 or 3 times a week. So the idea is to get a bit more method in our madness and to know that and to narrow our spraying down to certain critical periods. So yeah, to answer your question, the detailed work on bees now, but getting more effective fungicidal control or fungus control, that definitely is happening. Sorry, other questions? Sorry.
If the government takes 7 years to approve a chemical, how long do they take to approve a parasitoid?
That is, there's no figure on that, but the process is entirely different. The process for a pesticide is very bureaucratic. I must admit the law that mandates this, Law Act 36, is actually a very, very well thought out act. It's over the years, it has become more difficult and difficult and difficult. So the law is good, but there's a different law that applies to parasitoids. If the parasitoid works and we find that it's not affecting our indigenous insects, it could be released in a year. It could be released in half a year. It all depends on the speed of the research, and obviously it all depends on the insect itself. At this moment it works very differently from a pesticide registration. Pesticide registration works through government, but bringing in a parasitoid works through there's a group of people that evaluate these things a few times a year. They evaluate the progress or not that is being made. If they reckon, if those group of people in Pretoria reckon this thing is okay to be released, it could go out very quickly, but it could also take a long time. There's absolutely no way of telling it. Sorry, now we can have yours.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Schalk from the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. And my question is more or less the same as her, but I wanted to check from your side on the lengthy process. Do you have any picture or proven scientific approach that can be used perhaps to minimize that particular long time taken for registration?
We spoke about it in the previous group. I do not have such a thing, but I think it's important that we as an industry body and you and probably the chemical companies at a stage get together and discuss, because there is certain products obviously have to go through the entire process. Certain products, such as biological products, should be able to go through a lot quicker. So I think at this moment we're all talking not to each other.
Okay,
So I think it's important that we just sit around and have a calm discussion and sort it out, because it in the end we all win.
So I would propose that perhaps you initiate a formal engagement.
I must get your contact afterwards.
So that we begin to deal with that. And also in view of the EU's take or position on reducing the usage of agrochemicals, what is your take as the South African industry?
We will have to change. I'm talking for me now just from a macadamia viewpoint. I think for various reasons we will have to move towards a more environmentally friendly approach. I think the fact that the EU has started this is just coincidental, but it actually now has become more imminent that we make this change. You know, when I read up on the research, but when I joined the industry and started to do research, 3 or 4 sprays were sufficient in the season. We didn't apply fungicides. We applied the odd pyrethroid to control sting bugs, and the results were good. There were no issues. Then slowly over the years, the numbers crept up and crept up and crept up. When I joined SAMAC last year, I was confronted by a bunch of newbie farmers in the White River area that showed me programs up to 24 sprays a season, and it's not sustainable. You know, that you cannot do. You cannot. I know most farmers are not doing that, but I mean, so there's various reasons why you cannot do that. Firstly, obviously, it's not economical. There's no way in the world you'll make money from a small farm if you apply that much chemicals. And secondly, you know, someone overseas just got to write the wrong thing in the wrong paper and we're in trouble. So we can't. There's lots of reasons. There's more reasons, but like I said, you know, those things are things that people latch onto, but it's not a reflection of the industry at large. We've been talking to a lot of guys in the Nelspruit area the last year or so, and to be very honest, I think, especially if you compare it to some of the other industries, the Mac industry is not. It's not. I think there's a lot of effort and a lot of movement in the right direction already as we stand. So I hope it's a lot of talk, but I think I hope I answered your questions.
Yes, no, I'm well answered. Perhaps through the chair here, maybe I would like to make a proposal that maybe those 2 points, the board maybe take those issues for further discussion.
Good idea.
If possible, maybe before maybe before next day, at least to table something formal to the department via the DG's office.
I would like to do that, and if we can make contact afterwards, I think we can get the ball rolling.
Yes, I'll also make follow-ups on those 2.
We must just afterwards just meet up.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Hanley. Cheers.